Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a really tense, highly complex situation on the global stage. We're talking about the current standoff between the US and Iran, based on some fresh broadcast data. We are looking at a ceasefire that's literally hanging by a thread right now. And with global energy markets, massive military power, and high-stakes diplomacy all colliding, this is one of those situations that actually impacts all of us, right down to what we pay at the gas pump. So our goal today is to objectively map out this geopolitical chessboard, looking strictly at the data, the rhetoric, and the maneuvers we're seeing from both sides.
To help us navigate this, we're going to break things down into 5 parts. First, the state of the ceasefire. Second, the U.S. blockade and demands. Third, we'll look at the shuttle diplomacy happening in the background. Fourth, the dispute over the Strait of Hormuz. And finally, we'll assess the strategic conflict.
All right, starting with part 1, the state of the ceasefire.
To really grasp the tension in the air right now, we have to ground ourselves in the timeline. 83. According to the broadcast data we're looking at, there have been 83 days of active war. That is a massive stretch of direct, open hostilities between these two nations before anyone even considered hitting the pause button. And contrasting those 83 days of fighting, we have just 6 weeks of this current, fragile ceasefire. Now put that into perspective. This pause has lasted more than half the time of the actual war itself. And yet, still no deal. 0. And with Washington hinting that Iran only has a matter of days to prove they're serious, man, that clock is ticking really loudly.
So what does the American public make of all this? Well, despite the totally mixed signals out there, a recent Fox News poll shows a pretty definitive lean. 65% of registered voters, and that's across all political parties, by the way, believe the U.S. is currently winning this conflict. Only 34% disagree. So even if people aren't necessarily eager for active combat, they definitely perceive the U.S. as holding the upper hand. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact dynamic driving our next section.
Which brings us to part 2, the U.S. blockade and demands.
This is where we actually see economic and diplomatic leverage being tested in real time. On one side of the chessboard, President Trump's demands are super explicit. He wants complete, 100% good answers from Iran, stating point blank that there will be absolutely no sanctions relief until an agreement is signed. Oh, and he also noted the U.S. military is fully ready to go. On the flip side, the Iranian foreign minister has set up this dual posture. They're saying, look, we're ready for diplomacy if it serves our interests, but we are equally prepared to fiercely defend our country. It is an absolute standoff.
And those absolute demands, they are translating into a very harsh reality out on the water. Just look at the sheer scale of this U.S. blockade being enforced right now by CENTCOM. Marines have actually boarded an Iranian-flagged tanker, they've redirected 94 commercial vessels, and entirely disabled 4 others. But the craziest part is this enforcement has left more than 1,500 ships and oil tankers completely stranded. I mean, just imagine that level of a gridlock in one of the world's most critical energy lanes. The economic squeeze here is just massive. But while the military is out there enforcing this huge physical blockade, diplomats are sweating it out behind closed doors. That takes us to part 3, shuttle diplomacy in high gear. Smack in the middle of these really high-stakes negotiations is a critical mediator, and that's Pakistan. Just to give you an idea of how urgent this is getting, Pakistan's interior minister has been in Tehran for the 2nd time in under a week, and their army chief is actually expected to join the talks too. Right now, word is Tehran is actively reviewing counter-peace proposals from Washington. Make no mistake, this back-and-forth mediation is basically the only fragile thread keeping a pause on military strikes right now. But that diplomatic thread is being seriously stressed in one specific, vital geographic bottleneck. Let's move to part 4, the Strait of Hormuz dispute. So, as a direct countermove to the U.S. blockade, Iran threw a curveball. They announced the creation of the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. By their definition, this is a newly controlled maritime zone. Iran says they'll reopen the strait, sure, but strictly to friendly countries who coordinate with this new authority, get explicit permission, and potentially even pay transit fees to pass through. So the crucial point is how Washington reacted to this idea of a new Iranian toll booth. Their response was immediate and incredibly blunt. Quote, simply unacceptable. Think about the dynamic here. You've got the U.S. enforcing a super strict military blockade, while Iran is simultaneously trying to claim sovereign, monetized control over those exact same waters. It's a massive, head-on collision over maritime authority. With this severe deadlock out on the water, how are military strategists looking at the board? That brings us to our final section, assessing the strategic conflict.
The broadcast featured a really in-depth strategic breakdown from Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, and he offers a highly aggressive viewpoint on the situation. His words are blunt: you put your foot on their throat, accept some risk, it is a war. Arguing against the 34% of Americans who feel the U.S. is not winning, Kellogg is insisting that maintaining this intense, unforgiving pressure is literally the only way to force a resolution on American terms.
Breaking down his specific recommendations, Kellogg is a big advocate for precise pressure over a massive occupation. He actually strongly advises against a traditional ground invasion, pointing out that Iran is too large for that. Instead, his strategy is all about seizing strategic, key islands to choke their economy and force the straits open. On top of that, he suggests the U.S. should capitalize on the active internal revolts happening inside Iran right now, going so far as to recommend doing everything possible to take down the current theocratic government. His final assessment is pretty stark. He believes Iran is losing the war. They just don't realize it yet. All right, let's pull the whole picture together. We are looking at a landscape defined by 83 days of historical conflict, paused by just 6 weeks of a very uneasy ceasefire. You have the U.S. squeezing hard with a massive blockade that's left 1,500 vessels stranded. You have Iran pushing back, demanding transit fees through this new Strait Authority. And while diplomats are frantically shuttling through Pakistan trying to find peace, military strategists are openly outlining plans for regime collapse. Which brings us to the ultimate question facing the international community today. With diplomacy hanging by a mere thread and two uncompromising powers clashing head-to-head in the exact same waters, who is going to make the final move to break this geopolitical stalemate? Are we about to see a massive diplomatic breakthrough or a sudden, explosive return to active conflict? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.